Cold Blood Lake surface. Welcome to Dark Speak Channel. Please listen to tonight's story. In the early days of Tin Ha, in a remote area called Ho Dain Mak, the population lived sparsely on the hillside. The land was dry and rocky, but the people were very gentle. In the small village at the foot of that mountain, there were two families living at opposite ends of tragedy. On one side was Bowie Van Hugh, a notorious landlord in the area. With a 3-story red brick house, buffaloes and cows filling the yard, money piled high like a mountain. But behind that brocade coat was a soul as dark as mud at the bottom of a well. Bowie Hugh lived by lending money at high interest rates, and when someone encountered something bad, he would rush in like a shark smelling blood, offering loan contract with cruel terms, then coldly seizing the land, pushing that person into a dead end. The village chief was Tai Vin, a gentleman who lived by working as a hired hoe, taking care of his fields, wife, and children all year round. The rickety earthen house was about to collapse, but for Vin, as long as his wife still smiled and his children still called him father, that was enough. Then disaster struck like lightning. His beloved wife, Lou, suddenly contracted a strange disease. Her skin turned purple, her eyes turned white, and she had convulsions every night. The villagers rumored that she was possessed, but the herbalist said she needed a precious medicine from the faraway Luke Tui district to save her life. The price of the medicine was so high that the whole village could not afford it. Vin sold all his buffaloes, fields, and even dismantled the door of his house to sell, but still had half left. With no other choice, he went to the house of the owner, Bowie Hugh, knelt down on the brick yard, and begged for help. Bowie Hugh pouted, pulled out a debt note from his sleeve, and said that if he just pointed his finger, he would have money to bring home. In desperation, Tai Vin trembled as he pressed his finger against the red mark. But before the medicine arrived, Lou was dead. Her eyes were still closed, her hand still clutching the piece of cloth he had left behind. The two children hugged their mother's body tightly, screaming until their throats were hoarse. Vin was numb as if petrified, his soul drained. Less than 3 months later, Bowie Hugh sent his servants to collect the debt. Without waiting for the deadline, he ordered the confiscation of the ancestral house and land. The servants chased the father and 3 children out of the house in the middle of a cold, rainy night. That night, people saw 3 figures huddled under an ancient cotton tree near the shore of Ma Lai Lake, next to the abandoned temple, and then they were never seen again. Some said they had left the village for another place. But those who passed by the lake that night swore that they saw the figure of a man wearing a torn hat, holding a small child, holding the hand of an older child, slowly walking down to the dark, calm water. They thought the story was over. The following fall, strange things began to happen to Mr. Bowie's house. At night, the lamp hanging on the pole flickered, as if someone was blowing it. In the brick yard, the sound of bare feet echoed as if someone had just walked through the rain. The cry of a child echoed in the kitchen at 3 a.m. The voice choked as if it was being strangled. One moonlit night, the dog guarding the gate of the house suddenly howled, then ran straight into the wall and died. The servants began to leave, leaving only a few steadfast ones. They said that late at night, there was a shadow standing in the yard, wearing a torn hat, holding a baby, staring into the main room, where Mr. Bowie Hugh was sleeping. Then one night, Mr. Bowie disappeared. In the bedroom, wet footprints were still imprinted from the door to the edge of the bed. The curtains were covered in mud, with children's handprints everywhere. In the yard, people saw a hollow as if someone had dragged it, then it disappeared towards Ma Lai Lake. From then on, Dain Mak Lake became famous throughout the region with a new name, Cold Blood Lake. No one dared to approach the lake after sunset. It was rumored that on the day Tai Vin's wife died, the lake's surface was as still as a sheet of paper, and if you listened carefully, you would hear a mournful lullaby broken in the cold wind. And under the water, people believed that 3 figures were still waiting for the debtor to return to pay the price with blood. And then one full moon night, the bright moon hung like a silver blade in the sky, shining down on the moss-covered tile roof of the Bowie family's house, now riddled with cracks. In the cold room, Bowie Van Hugh turned over in his nightmare. He heard a creaking sound coming from the door. A figure quietly walked in. Not a servant, not a thief, but Tai Vin. But it was not the Vin of the past, the gentle, simple farmer, but something that had died and returned. His face was pale, cold as candle wax. His deep eye sockets were filled with endless emptiness. Vin did not speak, just stood there at the head of the bed, his eyes fixed on a man who had robbed him of all his family's property and life. Suddenly, from the crack in the door, a gust of wind blew through, carrying a whisper that sounded like fire licking the back of his neck. "I have come to collect a blood debt. Pay it all, every drop." Bowie Hugh let out a piercing scream. But when he woke up, he was hanging in the middle of the room, eyes rolled back, mouth gaping as if he was still holding back his last plea. On the opposite wall, someone had used fresh blood to write in large letters, "One's own will be returned to another. Blood for blood. Wrongdoing has a head. Debt has an owner." From then on, the Bowie family's house was sealed. No one dared to come near. At night, the lantern outside the gate would automatically light up, even though no one was living inside. The cries of children and the sobbing of women often echoed from the cracks in the wall, echoing through the village road. Some curious people risked their lives to go inside to investigate, but when they came out, their faces were pale, mumbling as if they had lost their minds, constantly repeating, his whole family, stood looking at me from the wall, blood flowing. People began to stay away from that place, named it the House of Three Souls' Blood, and built a small shrine right at the beginning of the path, hoping that the wronged soul would soon rest in peace. However, the crime did not stop at one person. Many years later, a wealthy merchant named Tien Ba Ho moved back to the village and bought back Tai Vin's old land. He also used the old tricks, lending money at high interest rates, forcing people to sell their land, and monopolizing the fields. One rainy afternoon, Lai Thuan, a poor farmer who had just lost his wife to illness, knelt in the middle of the yard, holding his 2 young children, and begged, "Please, I beg you, my wife is dead. I have 2 young children. Please give me back that land. I will work for hire for the rest of my life. Just please don't take away the last hope of my father and I." Tien Ba Ho didn't even look, just sneered, his eyes cold as rusty steel. "Kick me out. Those who don't keep their word don't deserve mercy." That night, the wind suddenly blew up, even though the sky was cloudless. In his sleep, Tien Ba Ho heard the sound of bare feet on the brick floor, the stench of pond mud wafting by. From the head of the bed, there was the sound of a child giggling, then a broken lullaby echoed from the ground. "Father, the blood is so warm. I want to take a bath." Tien jumped up, his whole body covered in cold sweat. On the opposite wall, a child's handprint in mud and blood stretched from the ceiling to the floor. A few days later, people found Tien Ba Ho's body lying sprawled in the middle of a rice field, Tai Vin's old land. The nearby rice plants were wilted, the soil turned a dark red as if soaked in blood. Strangely, his back was scratched, revealing each line of words carved as if by a knife. "This land is blood. Whoever sows, sin will reap injustice." From then on, every New Year's Eve, someone saw the shadow of a man bent over, carrying 2 children across the old field. Each step he took left a trail of blood. Each time he turned around, his eyes still shone with extreme pain, and an oath not to be released until justice was paid for with every drop of blood. Remember, those who live on the blood of others, when they die, their own blood will be claimed back. The resentment does not disappear on its own. It only waits for the right moment to return. The fire burned all night, as if burning away the sins of a lifetime. But strangely, the fire did not spread, did not touch anything nearby, as if it only burned the house of the blood debtor. The next morning, the villagers only saw the blackened ground, ashes scattered like the ashes of the dead. But among the ashes, there was something that made anyone who saw it shiver. 3 small lumps of soil were neatly arranged in a row. On each lump was a scorched erica branch, exactly like the type of erica that Lai Thuan had planted. A blind old woman in the village, who used to be the keeper of the shrine at the beginning of the village, burst into tears upon hearing the news. The 3 of them did not go anywhere. Their souls are still lingering. Their blood has not been collected enough. After the night of the fire, people thought the disaster had ended. But no, the villagers began to have the same dream. They saw themselves standing in the middle of an old rice field, on the shore of Malai Lake, in the pitch-black night. In front of them was the shadow of a man with a hunchback, carrying 2 children in his arms, slowly walking toward the middle of the field, leaving bloodstains on the ground with each step. The little boy raised his head. His eyes were cloudy, and he spoke in a cold, sing-song voice. "We cannot go back yet. Father, not enough blood, not enough fields." Since the death of Tien Ba Ho, whoever returned to the village to buy old land met with misfortune. A merchant from the district market came, had just put down a deposit to buy the field when he returned home, and his wife had a miscarriage, and the child was suffering from a fever. In his dream, he saw himself plowing in the field, and the plow kept digging into human bones. A curious geomancer came to curse the dragon vein, standing in the middle of the old Tien house, sneering. Ghost stories are made up by people. This land is good. The feng shui is good. If no one can keep it, let me keep it. That night, he slept on that land, pitching a tent in the middle of the old brick floor. The next morning, people found him dead, eyes wide open, mouth agape, both hands scratching the ground as if he wanted to crawl out from under the grave. On the scorched wall behind, blood oozed from somewhere, forming a series of scribbled words like a child's. This land buries blood. Anyone who touches it will turn to ashes. From then on, Tai Vin's old field became a forbidden area. Rice grew naturally, but no one dared to harvest it. Areca trees bloomed in the middle of the desolation. The night wind blew. The smell of incense smoke mixed with the cries of children and the creepy lullabies. The villagers could only light incense and sprinkle salt, hoping that the souls of the dead would be released. But everyone understood. As long as greed persists, the blood will not stop flowing. But not a human. Something that used to be a human. Eyes white, skin ashen, holding 2 children in his arms. The older one held a ragged doll. The younger one still wore the same old bloodstained shirt from years ago. All 3 stood still, not blinking, not moving, just looking. Tien Ba Ho burst into tears. For the first time in his life, he cried like an abandoned child. No more power, no more money, no one by his side. Only the dead that had pushed to hell, now returned, not demanding their lives, but demanding the truth. He collapsed, his 2 hands clutching the ground, screaming like a madman. "Forgive me. I was wrong. I was wrong. Forgive him. He is my child. He doesn't know anything." Lai Fuan didn't answer. He just gently turned his back, led his 2 children into the middle of the ancient banyan tree, as if melting into its bark, but before disappearing. The little girl turned her head back. Her eyes were like needles piercing the heart. Her mouth moved, not making a sound, but Tien Ba Ho heard it clearly in his head. "Father, return the field to me, return mother to me, return even death to us." The next morning, people discovered Tien Ba Ho hanging from that very banyan branch. The horrifying thing was his face was not in pain, not in horror, but had a distorted, deformed smile. His eyes were wide open, staring at the old blood field, which used to be Lai Thuan's land. Underneath his body, a suicide note was written in blood, using his own torn index finger. "My child is the incarnation of a resentful spirit. My wealth is made of human blood. The stolen land cannot nourish its roots. The unjustly dead will not sleep in peace. Whoever sows must reap. Whoever steals must pay." The news spread throughout Yaofeng. People buried the old man's body. But after digging the grave 3 times, the ground collapsed. The coffin was pushed up as if something in the ground refused to accept it. Finally, the villagers had to take the body to the deserted mound behind the old temple, where the placenta of Lai Thuan's wife and 2 children had been buried. That night, the wind blew. There was no thunder, but all the dogs in the village howled at once. From a deserted mound, someone saw a flickering fire and a soft lullaby. The red-tiled house of Yaofeng, now a ruin. No one dared to come near. At night, passers-by always heard the sound of children crying, the sound of men screaming, and a voice trembled in the wind. "Father, return the field to me. Return mother to me. That story was engraved on an ancient stone stele in the village communal house, like a lesson for life. Ill-gotten wealth, like blood flowing in the fields. Sow deceit, reap resentment. Human blood cannot nourish the tree of happiness. Human land cannot plow a peaceful spring. Finally, all the books, all the calculations, all led to a number exactly equal to 100 taels of silver, not a penny less. That was the amount of money that Lai Thuan begged for to save his wife and children, but was taken by old Tien with a trick. Now he has paid it all back, not with money, but with the life, honor, and soul of the son he loved the most. People say that after that night, the Tien family mansion seemed to have turned into a netherworld. The rotten wooden gate was closed, the walls were covered with moss, the broken lanterns hung crookedly on the porch, flickering when the wind blew. No one saw Tien Baho leave the mansion anymore. All we knew was that every night there was a flickering oil lamp in the study, and his voice whispered, as if he was talking to people who had passed away. Lai Thuan, can you forgive me? I have already paid for that piece of land, your wife and children. I burn gold every month. Forgive me. I know my mistake. Those words kept repeating, drifting with the wind, falling into the night, cold as the morning dew on a tombstone. Then one day the mansion gate opened. No one opened it. It opened by itself. The wind blew from inside, carrying with a musty, fishy smell and the cold air of the underworld. No one in the village dared to come near. Only a blind beggar passed by, stopped and said tremblingly, "Do you guys smell it? The smell of resentment is very heavy. Someone is being led not to the other side, but to sink very deep to the bottom of karma." The last night, the only remaining old servant sneaked out of the palace of the third watch, ran straight to the village hall, covered in blood, his mouth mumbling and unable to speak. After calming down, he could only utter one sentence. Old Tien broke his own neck in front of Lai Thuan's altar. The next morning, the villagers came. The body of Tien Baho lay on the floor, his neck broken as if twisted backwards, his face wrinkled, but he had a strange smile. On the altar, the brand-new tablet was engraved with blood-red words. The one who plows the field turns into soil. The one who robs the land becomes a hungry ghost. A lifetime of greed, 3 lifetimes of repayment. A tear is measured in a drop of blood. The people took wood to make a plank and buried him under an abandoned grave mound. But 3 days later, the grave was dug up, the coffin was empty. No one saw the body. All we know is that from then on new moon nights, anyone passing by the old field would hear the dry sound of hoeing and the old man's voice softly lamenting. Every stroke of the hoe, every drop of blood you take, you must pay. That story was spread by word of mouth throughout the region, becoming a taboo in the land of Dufang. No one dared to mention Lai Thuan's name, nor did anyone dare to reclaim the old field, because people believed that under that layer of soil there were not only bones, but also unsettled grudges. And then, in an afternoon of drizzling rain like incense smoke, Tien Baho breathed his last. No one heard him groan. No cries. Only the scent of incense quietly wafted from the bedroom, where he lay on his side as if he were sleeping, his face strangely serene, no longer holding back any fear. The servant placed a notebook in the coffin, buried him next to Lai Thuan's fake grave, where he knelt down to repent every day. That night, the whole village was immersed in a strange rain. The rain was not heavy, but each drop fell. The smell was like blood, and sensitive people said that they smelled the scent of incense mixed with the sound of chanting coming from the old rice fields. Some people dreamed of the 3 alive father and sons, still holding hands, walking through the rustling rice fields. But this time there was no resentment in their eyes, but peace, as if they had just released a 100-year burden. From then on, the bloody field no longer groaned every night. The rice plants still bloomed, but the heads were no longer red as blood, but a brilliant yellow, as if the souls of the deceased had finally been reborn. The villagers called it Ruong Hoi Tam, where generations after generations came to pray when they accidentally committed evil deeds. The Tien family mansion was not destroyed. A small temple was built, worshiping both of them, Lai Thuan and Tien Bao, not to honor, nor to erase the sins, but to remind, doing evil and then repenting does not make the sins disappear, but it can turn resentment into righteousness. Doing good after having caused evil does not make people become good, but is enough to let light shine again on the darkest areas of the soul. The story ends like a cycle of cause and effect has been completed. Tonight, if you pass by an abandoned house and see a man kneeling by a grave, holding a small notebook in his hand, do not disturb him, because maybe he was recording every good deed to redeem a lifetime of sins. Finally, when everything was lost, fame, wealth, even the son he had placed all his hopes on, Tien Bao realized that son was not a blessing, but karma reincarnated to collect debts. He spent all 30,000 taels of silver, exactly the amount of blood debt he had taken from a farmer Lai Thuan in the past. Awakening in loneliness and torment, he devoted himself to doing good deeds, redeeming his mistakes with every breath of his life. What you sow, you reap. What you borrow, you repay. Karma never gives warning. It comes when we have no way back. This story is not to scare, nor to entertain, but to warn those who are still alive and forget that the law of cause and effect does not need notarization. It does not need signatures. It remembers everything and returns every penny, every life. And here, the story, Dead of the Underworld, Sao Once, Pay Back for a Lifetime, is also closed. If you find this story meaningful, please leave a comment. Share your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe to the Dark Speak channel so as not to miss the next scary spiritual, karmic, and reincarnation stories. Dark Speak, where unliberated souls still whisper every night. See you in the next video. Goodbye.